This is Matthew McConaughey,
Natalie Portman,
James Patterson,
Michael Ian Black,
and you are listening to
Five Questions
with Dan
Schawbel.
Welcome to Five Questions, Lewis.
Well, thanks for giving me something to do today.
Many talented comedians acknowledge the dark side of comedy in that it can come from a place of pain and insecurity. Is there a connection between your childhood experiences and the anger you use in your comedy?
No, not even close. Not my anger. It wasn't a dark side. It was more about authority. And which is now played out this week to the point of unbelief. You know, here's where you end up when you don't pay attention to authority and you just kind of trust authority. And I never. And once I realized that that was really where it came from, the anger. It didn't come. I had a really kind of a pretty good childhood. So it wasn't like I was, kept in my parents didn't lock me in a closet for 4 hours a day.
Well, that's really interesting. It seems like it's just the environment around you as you were growing up in terms of the news and politics that have, made you be like, what the heck is going on? And that has contributed to the anger. And then your, stand-up routines and all your, comedy specials, that's kind of where you project that anger. It's, it's how you kind of live with what's going on, is you want other people to know what you're feeling.
Yeah, I came out of being born and raised around Washington, D.C., and so I was confronted with that all the time. And my mother was pretty angry about stuff, and so I think in part, my humor kind of came less from. My mother probably had more of a dark thing, but even hers was not. She had a pretty good upbringing. She was, her parents were, my grandparents were immigrants, but she was really, she was pissed a lot of the time. So and I think that she was, her kind of anger and sarcasm was funny. She was funny and I think that I picked up on that.
And based on your struggles and successes you've had throughout your whole career, why do you think you were able to achieve what you have while most comedians fall short?
Luck, in part. Luck in part. In part, it's timing. Because a lot of it had to do with when I hit. It was around the time that we went into Iraq, which was the George Bush presidency, and that kind of setup was like, so you're going to just try, these guys are showing you photos and we're going to believe that this, because it was so, here's where the target's here and you're going there. I mean, it was like, please guys. So a lot of, I think, a lot of it came out of that. A lot of it came out of the fact that the Daily Show came at that time, and I was on it and did well on it, and I had a lot of material that, and I hadn't been seen as a comedian. I was working in theater. I think that the fact that so that made me a new kid on the block at the age of my late 30s. And, so that kind of contributed to it. Conan came on. He started putting me on. Comedy Central started using me and Dave Attell as kind of somewhat the face of the network for a time, where they used this, in a variety of fashions. When they were, they had hosting other event things that were going on the network, and also the fact that I came out of theater. So I think that had a bit to do with it. I really wanted, I think, really that was what my aim was, theater. And I was doing stand up on the side for just fun and not really going to clubs. So I was, whatever style I uh, was developed completely outside of the comedy club. So I wasn't kind of, as many comics are, and brilliantly so many of them. Uh, that's where they were born and raised in terms of their craft. I was born and raised in theater.
Yeah, so it was a kind of a unique perspective based on your background. And
Yeah,
it's also came to be a perfect storm. And I think that, all luck and timing, a lot of it is driven by, not just experiences, but a lot of hard work. Like
but I
any
did work.
comedian that has reached your level of success has worked crazy hard. About
It's just,
anyone in any field, but especially in the arts. You really have to dedicate yourself to it.
well, you do, but in part, what's always interesting about that is that I never felt like, except on certain nights when I was doing, running from a club to a club to a club, uh, in Manhattan, kind of doing sets of comedy in a variety, from Rodney Dangerfield's to Catch a Rising Star to the Improv to running around town. Um, that I was. That was, the work was really, I always felt like the work was getting was getting to the club, not being there. It was, the work itself never felt like work. I worked a lot in theater, but I never felt um, it was work at all. I didn't feel like, a lot of it, and I think for a lot of folks in theater and the arts, it's the payment is what that you get to do that stuff, and that you might not be making money at it, but boy, you wake up and you go, wow, I get to do this.
I completely agree. I mean, you're basically monetizing and building a career off of a hobby, something like early in my career, I did many businesses and projects. A lot of them were in the creative pursuits, and I didn't get paid for them. And now I've turned all of those, much like you have, into businesses and outlets. So I totally relate to that. And how do you think your anger through your comedic routines has helped you both make people laugh, but also convey important social and political messages?
Wow, I have to think about it. You made me think. That's really that's irritating. Well, I don't know. I know that it's made people laugh because and I don't know what the secret of the secret of the sauce is in part, but I mean kids have told me from the very beginning, you're really funny. You're just you're just like my dad, only you're funny. So I was able to, it was kind of being able to express stuff that people had on their minds that I was just able to say, and I wasn't, because I wasn't kind of born and raised in comedy clubs, and born and raised in theater in part, that I didn't, I worried more about what I was saying at times than the laugh. And then the audience is the one who guided me toward the laugh. So I owe them a great debt. I was, and the anger, you can't be really angry on stage, okay? Because if you're really angry on stage, you have a tendency to push. People are just going to go, whoo, or so it was the way I played it, and that I think I learned from watching really some really fine actors act. So there was a sense of acting to it, but in a sense at times, I mean, I could really go off, but I knew how to bring it back from what I learned in clubs. And but I don't know. I've never thought. I never thought of that I was delivering a message of any sort as much as I was trying to entertain people or giving them a moment of stepping back from the reality that they were dealing in.
Yeah, that's a good reflection. And when I think about you, Jon Stewart, Trevor Noah, especially The Daily Show, they their comedy allows them to get a message across in a consumable way that really resonates, especially with young people, because a lot of people are sick of just watching the news and hearing the same thing, but you can express that in the, comedy medium and format that can really penetrate. And I think, especially for me, like that's something that has worked really well. And speaking of social and political issues, our society is more divided than any time in my lifetime. Despite all these issues you talk about in your routines, what gives you hope for the future?
Well, let's just take a moment. Our society was kind of just as divided in the late 60s, in terms of the same division was there that is today. It was that same kind of like, we have to, if you're not with us, you're against us. Well, no, jackass. I just don't agree with that idea. I don't think that this war makes sense. And we've been in the midst of this. But what gives me hope, and it's one of the things that gave me hope is kind of gone for a while, which was that I felt that I always had this real sense of, and I still in part do, in the American people. But it used to be in this kind of, Mr. Smith goes to Washington. The American people will rise to the occasion. I was always amazed that people. The thing that gave me hope, and it was that people would, if something horrible would happen, like a hurricane or a earthquake or 9/11, or some sort of, like the Oklahoma City bombing, something horrifying. And people would jump in cars from all over the United States who didn't even know the people there. And they would drive to help. It was instinctive. It's an instinctive thing that we seem to have, and that I felt was the one thing that I thought overrode everything else. And I still feel as if there's still a sense out there, and maybe I'm just, I think at times, maybe the one thing that this being locked up for this long, or kind of being not in the public square, as I call it, or people do call it, this long is that maybe I'm kind of stupid, but I don't feel that division. I feel like that, we may be 50-50 in terms of the Senate, or the in terms of the Senate, or and stuff, and that may be the case. But in terms of the amount of people who are really living in an alternative reality at this point, which is, I think, where we are. I don't think it's so much are we that divided. When I was in the 60s, there was no alternative reality. Okay, there was a reality. It was on TV every night. People accepted the reality. This is the reality. Well, now you got a group of people who don't accept the reality. Well, it's called Tufsky Shitsky, you idiot. That's the reality. I'm sorry. You don't get to make your reality up. Or if you do get to make your reality up, chances are you're on a drug. And that's when you get to make your reality up. And you do that in the privacy of your own home, or you go in the woods and you wander around and go, ooh, look at the trees. That's what you get to do. But this kind of division, I don't think is, I think that the majority of people are lean toward the reality of a democracy and the way in which it is that this what has exploded during the last 4 years. I have said this again. From the very beginning, the people say, "Well, what do you feel is hopeful about this kind of thing?" And I said, because I think what we're hearing, the sounds that we're hearing, the reaction that we're getting, the madness that's out there, is the sounds It's the sounds of dinosaurs that are dying. This shit is ending, and they are not going quietly. And so, in the course of my lifetime, one thing I think that came out now is in the course of my lifetime, a lot of this, the reaction that we're getting now was in a box. It kind of like, you know what? You can think of it, just do it at home, you fucking idiot. You know, you can go down to your basement and do it there, but you don't take it into the public square. You don't get to do that. Okay, that's it. That ball game is over, and that they open that box again, and hopefully, now that we know that it's, and in a sense, we're confronting the fact that it's still there. Now, hopefully, we will deal with it, and we will kind of go, no, no. You don't get to have the flag, the Confederate flag. You don't get to have these things. You have to realize your effect on other people. And I think that my hope comes from a younger generation that will move forward. And in part, what makes this fucking period so fucking difficult. We're in the midst of a transition from going from whatever age I was born and raised in, let's say it's industrial, to technological, and we're in the middle of it. And even someone is my friend Kathleen Madigan, who's 22, 23, 25 years younger than me, is more prepared for that than I am. That is where we're going to, and we're in the middle of that transition. That's the other thing that's making these fuckers insane, because they've been handed this new, oh look, I can get all this information on my Gecko, and they get lost in the screen, and I think that the generation that's coming up will be the one that knows how to, and is already evolving with the fact that will become a part of their lives and not dominate their lives. And I hope that made sense.
It made sense. And what I've been thinking about during this time is the word fragmentation, and the word self-interest, and agree with you in terms of reality. And those are shaped by both. Right? Yeah. People want to believe what they want to believe, and then they seek out media sources to confirm their own beliefs. And then if you've seen, there's a documentary called The Social Dilemma, and it showed that the algorithms have brought all these people who are sort of like-minded together and formed groups that would expound hate to other people, but those people would normally not have ever communicated with each other. So it's sort of like in your world, there was a perfect storm of how you were able to elevate in your career. There's also a perfect storm on why we're in this situation. But I think the really key point is there's been division for 70 years or more, right? There's always sort of been this division, and then at this point in time, it's kind of like exploded. Everything's come to a head. And there's a fragmentation in both parties. There's fragmentation in terms of the media. The word is fragmentation. And one of the big things that we've lost is a sense of community, especially because underneath all of this, you have the pandemic, you have the recession, people are at home, 150 million people are said to be in poverty this year. So that's 45% of America. So all of this has come to a head in a perfect storm.
Yeah. And it was a perfect storm, and that's the other thing people are losing sight of. That A, B, C, D, E, it's like a science experiment that worked because by accident, and it's not any, and it was all of the, and then not to say that all the, I don't want to people, well, you don't get anything, I don't want to hear your shit about what I just said. It's not, it's that it was. All of those elements were there, but they finally lined up. It becomes a different world if there's like, I had said from the very beginning when the two of them were running for the presidency. I won't even mention their names because it doesn't matter. But when the election before last, after the election after Obama's presidency, and initially when these two were nominated, well Hillary and him were nominated. I said it was the first time in my lifetime that two people were nominated and nobody liked. Nobody liked them. Nobody. Usually there was somebody, he's a little shittier. She's a little shittier.
Lesser of two evils.
Yeah, that was usually it. This was, nobody really wanted either of them. And I felt that, and I still believe that. It wasn't like an outpouring for him. Because it wasn't. It was shittiest. It was like, once again, it was, the popular versus the vote there. And if we'd grown up enough to kind of say, like every other country, you do have a popular vote, and this electoral college nonsense gets stopped, that's another thing we can move on. Because, it used to be that I did think there might have been a time when that might have made sense. I'm not a historian, that's for fucking sure. But you really lose voices now, and you really leave it up to 4 or 5 states. That ball game's over. Tough. They can't have Ohio or Georgia or Cleveland, or these places making these decisions for the country. I mean, you can in terms of the Senate and in terms of the House, sure, but not in terms of the president. We all get to vote, and that's it. Everyone's vote is equal. Your vote isn't more equal because you live in, outside of Boise. Fuck it. And I like Boise.
And what's your best piece of career advice?
My best piece of career advice is pursue what you love. If there's something that you want to do it. Don't let anybody talk you out of doing it. If you begin your career by saying, I want to do this because I love doing this, it will lead you to what you want to do. Even if it isn't, you will not fail, I believe, because if you're pursuing what it is you want to do, it's going to take you in the direction you want to go. You have to start by going in the direction you want to go. You can't start by saying, I need to make money. You can in terms of like a summer job, yes. But when it comes to your career, I don't believe that money should be the overriding factor. And at times it's going to be like, there'll be a sacrifice. I mean, because I didn't, I knew by going into theater, I was not really, people would say, talk about marriage and stuff, or you want to have a family. There are people who could do that. I'm just going, no, I can't do it. It's not going to work. I've already chosen to go down a path that I'm not going to make enough money to basically support myself. So you have to give up certain things if you really love something. And then you'll find, and I kind of knew that if it didn't work, I might end up teaching it, and then I might get married. Then that might be the road. But it has to be what it is you love. You have to take the first step towards something you love.
I agree. And with everything in life, there's a sacrifice because we only have so much time and there are trade-offs. So I think that's really great advice. And I appreciate the conversation. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, it was great. Thanks.